So we could probably start with Nanuque, which is the one I served in twice. That city geographically was furthest north in the mission. Minas Gerais still went a fair bit north of that, but it was the furthest north in the mission. And was in a bowl, basically. There was a huge rock. It was actually more like the one major portion was almost more like a jello mold. There was a huge rock in the middle of it. There was a river that went down, kind of curved around the base of it, and then the city was built up on the rock, across the river, and then kind of up the other side as well. And that one was furthest north, so it was the hottest of the cities that I served in. But there was wind to cool it down, and I say that because Governador Valadares, I can mention that one as well. That one was probably the hottest city, and I'll explain why. But that one was Nanuque was a fun city. Like I said, there was a good mixture of, I guess you could say, rich and poor. They had a couple areas where people, rich for those standards down there. They had slightly nicer homes, nicely finished and things like that. There were a couple of cities. There was this one road that just went straight back. It was one road, and it went for, I don't know how long it went. But it was just shacks, cardboard homes. It was interesting because it almost didn't seem to matter how poor a family was, they would have a TV in their house. And so when we would walk into some of these homes that just had sticks, literally sticks and mud and cardboard and just metal roofs, they would have a TV in their house, so they could keep up on all the Brazilian novellas, which are kind of like the soap operas. Everybody watched those. I even got caught up on a couple of them. It was kind of funny, but that one was interesting too. I always thought it was funny the way they had it situated. Is that way upstream they had a slaughterhouse where they would slaughter pigs. They would clean everything out in the river and get it all cleaned up and ready for sale. Then a little bit further downstream, there was like a pool area where kids would jump off and they would swim and do whatever they do in rivers. And then all the way down at the bottom, they had a complete bag all the way down at the bottom. They had all the women down there washing clothing in the river, and I'm like, so it's kind of gross when you stop and thought about it. We did have a sister to wash our clothes, but she would use a machine there at her house. But that one was, like I say, that was an interesting city. Come carnival time and major celebrations, because it was only an hour away from the beach in the next mission over, and so people would just clean out, and they would just move straight out to go out to the beaches and leave it pretty much empty. So in a lot of missions, like in Rio, where some of those missions, the missionaries would have to hunker down for a week and a half while they did all their partying, there was nothing going on in our town. So there was no real need for us to really hide, I guess, from Carnival. But that was some of those details about that city. In that city, we had one really good report about the churches and missionaries went out and served in a park. There was an article that was produced saying the missionaries, their actions speak louder than their words. And that was a real good publicity for the church at the time. It just opened people up, and it just made people more open, said these are good people who are really trying to serve the community, So that was a good experience, a good memory for that one. There was just one experience we had there with the power of the priesthood, which was really strengthened my witness that the priesthood is a real thing, and tangible power. We were teaching this woman who we had to take the bus to get out to her place, and we were teaching her at the time, and she wanted to be baptized, but she was living with a man who was not her husband, but he was an invalid. She was just basically taking care of him. He laid in the bed all day long. He couldn't sit up, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything like that. And we were in there and we were talking to her. Says, do you want to be baptized? And she said, I want to be baptized, but I'm afraid to leave him because of the state that he's in. And so we asked if she would like us to give him a priesthood blessing of health, which she consented to. And so we laid our hands on his head, gave him a blessing, and the blessing included included him being able to improve in his health so that she could move forward in her spiritual and gospel progression, right? Move forward with that. And that if he didn't have the opportunity in this life, that he would receive the opportunity afterwards. So we gave him that blessing, and then we left and came back to pick her up just to see where she was the morning of the baptism. And when we got there, he was sitting up, which he hadn't done in months. But he was sitting up, he was communicating, he looked really well, and gave her the confidence that she needed to go forward. And she was baptized that day. It was a really spiritual experience, very uplifting and very moving, her baptismal service. Dropped, and then, she was done, carried on with business, then she came home. And we went back to visit her the next day after church, because she wasn't at church. We wanted to know what's going on. And we went back the next day after church to visit her, and he had passed away. And it was like, well, that's, it was just amazing the way he was able to be up and about. But she had the post-missionary discussions, and they discussed a little bit more in detail about the temple and vicarious work for the dead. And I left on my mission. I left the area. She had just moved on, was continuing to come to church and continued to be active. But I had heard after I had left the mission that she had been preparing to go to the temple and to take his name to the temple and have his work done for him. So it was just really neat to see the priesthood bless in that way and have it so visibly, tangibly fulfilled, and which allowed this woman and this man to move forward in the gospel. And it was really an experience. But that did happen in Nanuque, and it was the second visit, so it was good that the first visit wasn't my last one. So that was a really neat experience. I loved that for that reason.